Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and we are joined once again over Skype by Stephen Kendal, someone that we've been paying a lot of attention to over the last year. We first saw him actually on Max Kaiser. John saw him, and we asked him on to WAM, and he has been able to provide incredible insight into economic trends around the world. He's a blockchain expert. He is borderline, I'd say, genius because I can't keep up with him half the time. But he's got some incredible insight that we're going to bring you here today. So thanks for joining us, Stephen.
Thanks, Josh, and thanks, John, and thanks for the introduction. I mean, that's I wouldn't quite say genius, but thanks for that anyway. Yeah, that's great.
Well,
Great. Thank you.
well, you got to give credit where it's due. Now, before we dig too deep, I'd love to hear an update from you on what you see is in the books for the future of blockchain.
Right. Okay. Well, the first time that obviously I think my voice was being heard was on the Max Kaiser show, as you said earlier on, in January of this year. Now, I first came about blockchain around about September of last year, and it was around about that time when I suddenly realised that if what I thought was right was going to actually happen, it was going to change everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. People's lives were going to be completely transformed. Now, I started around about September time talking to people, technical people, and explaining to them what I believe was going to happen. And they said, well, that can't be true. What you're telling me, if that's right, that is fundamentally going to change everything that is actually operating and the way that people live their lives. And I said, well, this is it. This is what I think is going to happen. And since then, from September of last year, when I first mentioned it on the Max Kaiser show in January, I was talking to Max about derivatives, and of course, since then we had the video with you guys where we went right back to the very beginning and explained the derivative or derivatives and the process in order for people then to understand by applying the blockchain to the derivatives what would actually happen. Now, since then, I've continued obviously explaining to people, and what I'm finding quite bizarre is that most people just don't understand it, just cannot understand it. And to give you a for instance on this, in July of this year, I went down to the House of Lords because there was a paper that was put forward, and it was the Bank of England proposing to the House of Lords in the UK that Parliament should debate and adopt blockchain in the future. So, of course, it was right up my street. I was sadly disappointed when I turned up and found out that Blythe Masters wasn't there, because it was actually Blythe that I wanted to see. Massive fan of what Blythe is doing. And what I found bizarre, I think it was about 3.5 hours. I was sat in the back, I was listening, and you've got 12, 14 lords who probably have an average age of, I don't know, 70, who, when they tried to explain to the House of Lords, these technical boffs, what blockchain was, completely lost them, to a point that one of the House of Lords, Lord Darling, who kept asking the same question over and over and over again, and the answer that the bods were giving Lord Darling was wrong in my eyes. Yeah, it wasn't answering what he was actually asking. And since then, since July, I've been asking people to ask me the very simple question: explain blockchain, but explain it in layman's terms. And the way that I explain it, and the most simple way that I explain it, is think of me, you, Josh, and John all agreeing a price for anything. Now, There's 7 billion people in the world. And when we discuss, me to you to John, back to me again, that's 3 people out of 7 billion. The more people that get involved in the discussion of a price will determine by pure consensus true price discovery. So if you take 3 people, 6 people, 12 people, 24 people, 48 people, and then suddenly you get into the balance of probability as to whether that price discovery is right or not, that is how the blockchain works. So take, for instance, silver. I mean, you know how I feel about silver. You know that I am absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, I see silver as the most undervalued asset on the planet.
Absolutely.
And if you actually realize that it's set by a handful of people, you take that and put that onto a blockchain where it's not a handful of people, it's actually a network of computers. Now, all of a sudden, people will say, well, hang on a minute, are you trying to tell me that blockchain is nothing more than a consensus? And that's it. That's all it is. It's a consensus. So I then took the concept and I then said that the internet, which obviously came on stream in the 70s, came up on the 80s, on chat rooms, social medias, we'll talk probably later on, I know we'll talk later on, came up in the early 2000s. What is actually happening now is blockchain is actually becoming the engine to value things. So you have the internet, as we all know the internet now, where you can Google things, you can go and check your emails, you can search for things, you can communicate things. The internet as it stands now is internet of information. Blockchain is actually going to make the internet of value. And that means that everything, and when I say everything, I mean everything, will have a value. And the bit that I'm heavily involved in is the manipulation of the markets, which are set by the derivatives. That is going to be the catalyst to reprice everything. So when I've talked about in the past over the last 12 months, we're in a very serious crisis at the moment, a very serious financial global crisis. And it's because you've got all these price discoveries, which are nothing more than the old analog way, where people have said, well, I think it's this and you think it's that, and we'll agree somewhere in between, where suddenly you're going to get the complete system, which has been up and running, say, from the 70s, which is now suddenly going to have to comply to a very strict set of rules. So, it's that I'm absolutely fascinated by the fact that there's very, very few people that know about it. And I would probably say if there was 100 people in this room, I would say that there'll be less than 5%, less than 5. There's 3 here, there's me, there's you, and there's John. But I'd be very surprised if we could find another 2, because most people actually don't understand it. They don't understand it because to them it's some kind of, magical computer cryptography, some clever language. Oh, it's, but it's not. It's nothing more than a consensus.
And really with this innovation, what it does is it goes back to the basics of kind of a free market, non-centrally planned economy that is based in something so new, such a new technological marvel that we couldn't have thought about maybe even 10 years ago. It would have been, way out of the park. We wouldn't have been able to predict that something like this could have come. But here we have this non-centrally planned way of insurance and, of course, investment and going into the future of blockchain. Stephen, what do you see for Steemit? Because I've gotten on Steemit. It's incredible innovation. Yes. It's something something that, I mean, there's been other guys that have done similar things, but never to the extent that Steemit has, where we see people like our friend here at WAM, Jeff Berwick, making tens of thousands of dollars off of blogging. And it's such an incredible thing to witness the beginning of, because I do believe that this will be the future. What do you think?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. Over the weekend, I don't know whether you picked up on something over the weekend, Josh, but
Hmm.
with social media, I always like to look back in history, just go back and just understand, where we have come from, where we are now, and that will give you an idea of where we're going. Now,
Yeah.
I about 2 weeks ago, on Steemit, posted the evolution of social media. And it was, I don't know whether you saw it, and I can send it over, you can include it in the interview. But it was a graph, it was a timeline. And it basically went back to the 80s when the internet first came about. We had chat rooms where you used to dial up on your computer, you used to go home at night, you dial up on your computer. Oh, I could talk to somebody in America. And it was amazing. You were in this chat room, but it was, of course, it was a conditioned social network because you could only choose the people that you were actually in the chat room with. Then, if you then took right the way through into 2000, around 2004, when Facebook came around and said, what we're going to do is we're going to build a platform which is going to allow people to share things. You can talk to your friends, you can talk to people, maybe celebrities, you can
Mm.
join conversations. And in 2004, when Facebook took off, I remember looking at this, and the very first thing I thought was, who's going to pay? Are they going to charge subscriptions? Are people going to charge for their time on Facebook? And of course, when Facebook was IPO'd, and I think $49, and then it crashed down to $19, and now it's at $125. Facebook today has a market cap, and forgive me if I get these figures wrong, but 235 billion dollars. That is equivalent to approximately $50 per person on the planet. Now, if you ask people, do you get paid off Facebook? They look at you as though you're stupid and say, well, no, it's free. And I'll say, right, okay. So you put your content on Facebook. You don't charge Facebook for your time, but the company has a valuation of $50 per person. Now, when you actually say to somebody, why is that? The first thing they say, advertising. So you'll say, right, okay, so it's advertising. Then you'll ask the same person, how many times have you clicked on an advert with Facebook? Never. Now at that point, you then got to say, well, if people don't interact with Facebook on the advertising side, why is it worth $50 per person? And it's worth $50 per person because what it does, it takes a complete, 1 billion users, and it's got all that information, who likes what do people like, and it basically, I mean, at 1 billion, you're talking 15%, or, you're taking a large portion, and then you can demographically predict, a classic example is if Audi, and I'm picking Audi, it can be any other car, but if Audi launch a marketing strategy on Facebook, and you have people liking it, disliking it, well, of course, that creates a massive amount of data, a valuable amount of data. So, of course, I've always said, if you share, if you like, if you talk to people, you should be rewarded. Now, I was taken back when I first saw Steemit, because the first thing I thought was, Facebook, this is going to cause Facebook massive headaches. And I'm sure, and I'm not saying it's happening now, but I'm sure Facebook, I'm a big fan of Twitter, Instagram, I'm sure these social media companies are looking closely at Steemit and saying, okay, well, we've got our shareholders who sit doing nothing. You'll have these institutions who, want people to use Facebook, want people to use Twitter, get people chatting. And they're the guys who are making the money. Now, over the weekend, I read an article and it said, this is the article, that everybody spends an average of 3 hours a day. So the first thing I did was I took 2.4 billion social media users, 3 hours a day, 365 days a year. That's 2.64 trillion, I think the figure is, of hours of communication. Now that is a massive, massive amount of information that is worth something. And at this point in time, prior to Steemit, you don't get rewarded for that. Now, I always saw Steemit. Is it a blogging tool with a cryptocurrency, or is it a cryptocurrency with a blogging tool? Now, now my simple way when I look at things, it's a cryptocurrency, but it's actually driven by a blogging tool. And I think what's going to happen and I do believe this, I do believe that Steemit is going to shake up the social media industry. And don't be surprised, within the next 12 months, you'll get a Facebook dollar, you'll get a Twitter dollar, you'll get an Instagram dollar. And what these will be reward tokens. So that you'll go on your Facebook, you put in something like, I don't know, I'm going down to the park, I'm going for a walk, not worth a lot, might get a couple of likes. But if you put something of value, some real value that, you've just worked out something, you've just, you've put up a technical graph that is telling you something, or you've worked out an equation, maybe in a school project, then what's going to happen? If all of a sudden you've created value that you've shared for free, then you're going to get rewarded. Now, at the moment, if you actually look at Steemit, and I over the weekend was watching how many posts, well, first of all, how many users has Steemit got? And I think it's something like, is it 50,000? And then I was watching over a period, over an hour, how many posts were actually made? And it's not that many. It is not that many. And I actually had a little chat with my nephew. When you mentioned Steemit to me, I was blown away straight away. Absolutely. Like Jeff Berwick, massive fan of Dollar Vigilante, huge fan of what Jeff does. And I saw it straight away. And of course, what you get is you get the jealous people. You get the people who say, oh, well, Jeff's just made 10,000, or Jeff's just made. And then, of course, if you actually understand that Jeff has been doing this for 20 years, I've been at this for 20 years. And of course, when people say, oh, this guy's just made some money here, or this, and there's a lot of jealousy. And behind Jeff's £15,000 or $15,000 reward of his post is 20 years experience that up until Steemit, he was willing to give out for free. Now, he has his subscribers, and I'm sure he tells his subscribers, up to date, the latest information. But suddenly what you're going to get is you're going to get people who have this information, the likes of Max Kaiser, the likes of Jeff Berwick, these, you guys, I mean, you guys are right in amongst all this. If you have some information, you go out on your roving reporting, Josh, with your rucksack and your camera, and you take something that the mainstream doesn't take, whether it's because it's been conditioned, but you have some absolutely valuable information. Now, you should share that and you should be rewarded. And I honestly think that people are going to be shocked. I've been asking people, I like to wind people up when it comes to the likes of rewarding social media. And I'll say, what did you do over the weekend, or what did you do last night? Oh, well, I just checked my news feed. Did you get paid for it? No. Well, so how long did you spend on it? Well, 3 hours. So you did that for free? Yeah. And yet they moan that, that they're only on £15 an hour, or they've got a job and they're only earning 26,000 a year. And yet they're willing to give up the majority of their free time on social media for free. Why?
Well, and isn't it interesting that with innovation like Steemit, I don't do what I do for money, certainly not.
Yeah.
However, I can put out free information without charging people, however, at the same time making money doing it.
Yeah.
And it's something where you can actually start to make money at your hard work without, panhandling and saying, hey, well, we need money. Instead, we put something out there, we put a bunch of effort into it, we add value to it, and then people view it, people upvote it, and then you end up with quite a few dollars in your wallet. And it's an incredible thing. And something that I wanted to point out here is that a lot of people are making the false claim that it is a pyramid scheme, but I often tell people that say things like this, especially these kind of jealous followers like you mentioned when it comes to what Jeff's doing. Oh, well, Jeff made all this money, that isn't fair. Well, it's not a pyramid scheme because you're not paying into it. You're not yes, you do need a network, much like a pyramid scheme. You need a network to actually thrive on it. However, you're not paying out, so no one's getting scammed. No one is losing on it. There's nothing to lose. But when people like yourself and people like Jeff Berwick point something out as thinking, well, this is going to be the future, I pay attention because I know you and Jeff have both made quite a few dollars and have saved yourselves from past crashes. Like you got out of that 2008 crash pretty happy there, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, what I find bizarre, I mean, I over the last 20 years, I've been investing over the last 20 years, and I'm a massive fan of Jim Rogers, and one of the things that always makes me smile with Jim Rogers is that is a great investor, but he's probably one of the world's worst traders, and I can relate to that because I never look at things and I think, is the price going to go up or down today? Is it going to be, is it going to be higher or lower tomorrow? I'm not bothered about that. What I do is I look at a bigger picture. I look at a trend. Is the trend moving in that direction, or is the trend moving in this direction? And one of the things that is going to happen over the next, certainly without a shadow of a doubt, over the next 5 to 7 years, is that you will see a major shift in the way that people share their information without being rewarded. Because one of the things, when the internet first came about in the 80s, and then of course Facebook came in 2004, people were voluntarily sharing this information because it was cool, it was fun, it was great to be, I can do this, I can do what everyone's doing. Well, of course, fast forward now to effectively 12 years, people are now starting to say, hang on a minute, you're getting paid on Steemit. Why aren't we getting paid on Facebook? And the only reason at this moment in time that Steemit is probably still in its infancy is people think it's a scam. People think that there's some kind of a con behind it. But in basic terms, when people suddenly start drawing down their Steam dollars into Bitcoin and then transferring the Bitcoin through an exchange into their bank and then drawing that out of the ATM and then going down and buying a burger with it or whatever, a car. There's one girl on Steemit, she's going around the world. I mean, this is happening. This isn't some kind of dream. This is actually real. And when I mentioned to my nephew, the first thing that he did was he went to his Play Store. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to get the app. I said, well, there's no app. Oh, well, what do I do then? I said, well, what do you mean? What do you do? How do I access it? I said, well, access it on the web. What? He said, no, he said, I've got to access it on, and I explained to him. So, of course, he got it and he started using it. And then I said to him, I said, what I want you to do is I want you to talk to your friends, 14, 15-year-olds. Talk to them. They're the next ones who are going to lift steam. Yeah. And the next minute, he came back to me and he said, they think it's rubbish. And I said, well, why do they think it's rubbish? Well, there's no app. Not only is it no app, they couldn't get it straight away. They couldn't absolutely get it straight away. So I said to him, I said, when you make your first dollar, yeah, spend it, but make sure your friends see it. And then they'll suddenly get it. And then, of course, it's a matter of time. When something like Steemit comes along, it'll disrupt the norm. And now the norm is that people go on social media and they can do all this file sharing and information sharing and blogging or whatever you guys do. And then suddenly people will suddenly realize, hang on a minute, if you go next door, you're getting paid for it. And I really believe, I strongly believe that once they launch an app and it'll take, in fact, I picked up on something over the weekend, it'll take one celebrity.
Well, absolutely. We've seen this with Jeff Berwick. He isn't maybe a huge celebrity, but he's well known among the monetary free market kind of community, and people knew who he was, saw him on Steemit, and then we saw almost kind of a rush to Steemit. We saw hundreds of people, thousands of people suddenly rushing to Steemit right after he announced he was on it. Steemit was around for a while, but he was the one who kind of put it out there for a lot of other people to come on and join in, and we saw so many people join in. And this, I could see some great things in the future for Steemit. The markets will adapt. I can definitely see that happening too. And just on a side note for, I think you said your nephew there, this is an example that we got to send to the developers of Steemit. Create an app. Guys, get with it.
Well, over the weekend, I put and again, it just goes to show what people's perception and the way people look at things. I put a post on Steemit, and I said something like, Steemit needs to break through the cool barrier. I think that was the title. Steemit needs to break through the cool barrier. And it was just explaining more or less what we've just talked about there. And one of the things I mentioned, it needs an app. And at the moment, it's such, in its early stages. It's like somebody saying to somebody in 2004, I've just heard about the Facebook, I think it was called the Facebook initially. They'll say, what's that? Well, it's a beta program, and you go, what? No, I'll stick to my chat rooms. Yeah, because that's what I know.
MSN Messenger.
Yeah, exactly. So I think.
And what happened to that? I don't see MSN Messenger around anymore, do you?
Not at all. And really, if it will take, and we've seen it, people, when I talk to people and explain to people that, things can happen or things will happen, people look at me as though I'm some kind of a, mental crazy person. But the reality is, it will take just a flicker of a switch, and then all of a sudden, something that's cool today won't be cool tomorrow. And I'm not saying for 1 minute that suddenly Facebook would lose its value. But it will lose its value if you have another option where you're going to get paid. Now, I think what's going to happen is, like I think I said earlier on, I think we're going to see a change in the way that people interact on social media, and more now than ever. People are listening to the likes of your show and Max's show and Jeff's show, and filtering out what they believe is true before they go to mainstream. I mean, I actually use social media for my first go-to source of information. You know, that information that you and John put up about silver being limitless, you know, I believe that it was probably, for me certainly, one of your best shows. Because when I was watching it, and in fact, I think I've probably watched it 3 times, because when you've got that sort of information, whether the information's right or wrong, the fact that you've presented the information in the way that you guys presented it, well, that has to be better than mainstream. Better than mainstream.
It gets people thinking, and when people start thinking, they start doing their own research, and when they start doing their own research, they learn a lot of incredible things. And now I could talk about things like Steam It all day. Of course, because of time constraints, we got to move on to the next question. But John,
yeah, and what it is, it's basically the bell curve that we're seeing in the works right now. You know, you got the early adopters, and then over time, you know, you'll hit the masses, and that's when, you know, the curve is going to start flattening out. And on the back end, even Steam It is going to be, you know, a technology over time that is going to be replaced by something else, probably, because technology always rises and people always create new things to adapt, to just create technology that works better and better for people.
That's the beauty of the free market and demand.
Exactly, and that's what we need to, you know, we need this force of decentralization that the blockchain takes on here. Actually, I wanted to ask you another thing about the blockchain and a proposal to implement a blockchain voting system to eliminate voting fraud in elections around the world. What do you think about that, Stephen?
Absolutely agree, 100%. I posted, I don't know whether you've seen it, but I've posted the future of UK politics. And as you know, we had the referendum, and the referendum had a logo, and it was a block. And the referendum had UK or EU referendum, and it had this block above it. And the first thing I saw was blockchain. And I honestly think that what we're going to see, forget about the free the single market. You know, all these discussions in the EU referendum build-up about the single market. There is no single market with blockchain. Blockchain by its sole definition becomes the only market. And you know, all these international partnerships and trade deals and all, it's all going to go. You know, it's all going to go. Anybody who talks about TPIP, anybody who talks about trade deals, anybody who talks about the single market, they're so yesterday. That's something that you would talk about in the 70s. This is 2016 and beyond. You know, I'm
salivating just thinking about the TTP getting shut down. I mean, that would be a beautiful thing to see.
You know, I mean, it's to sit down and say we're going to have a piece of paper that agrees everything that's going to happen in the next 20 years' time. What? Are you for real? When you've got a technology that is absolutely right today, you know, everything that's going to go on a blockchain is actually going to give an accurate representation of what's happening today. And you know, with a trade agreement, you know, they can spend 2 years on a trade agreement, and by the time the 2 years is up, everything's changed. You know, 1 million people will arrive in Europe. Well, when they actually set about the trade agreements, did somebody say, in 2016, we'll have to adjust those figures by 1 million? Well, no. So, of course, everything is changed. And with blockchain, you can change it instantly. So it's something that I'm a massive tech, you know, fan. And I always have been. I've been a massive tech fan for the last 20, 30 years from having the very first computer. And I really believe people misunderstand what technology is. And technology is a living thing. It's breathing. It's educating itself. It's learning. It's progressing. And what we have today, Facebook, social media, you know, the internet, That's a given. It's what's going to happen in the future is where, well, I think that's where the exciting part comes. And obviously, if you can get in at the beginning, then you're going to make a lot of money.
Oh, exactly. Uh, just changing, a little bit of we've been talking so much about the future right now, but last video that we did, Stephen, we talked about Deutsche Bank and what is the story for Deutsche Bank and what's up to come. And of course, Deutsche Bank and all these other bank and the whole banking system is a part of the past, basically. And now you're seeing a total implosion, which happens when you expand debt into oblivion. There's not going to be enough to pay that debt off, and nobody's willing to pay the debt off because they know that the system will over time implode. So with the recent manipulation that's going on and propping up these banks like Deutsche Bank and Monte dei Paschi in Italy and others, what do you see happening with Deutsche Bank? And also, if you can comment on the recent Deutsche Bank's extra gold debacle, where they're actually starting to struggle because they don't have the gold to deliver on demand for the paper holders.
Well, it's just very simple. Deliver the gold, and I'll get off the case. I mean, it's what happened with the delivery of the gold is yet another piece of the jigsaw. I mean. A lot of people saw that and, were going wild about it. And I kind of looked at it and I thought, well, yeah, I wasn't surprised. Everything that's happening with Deutsche Bank is really, it's just, why did they come out in, was it April time? And it's been such a great year for Deutsche Bank, but why did they come out in April time and say, guys, we've been fixing the gold and silver? Why would you do that? Well, you would only do that if you know that the game's up, And Deutsche Bank is such a, it's just people say, well, it won't fail.
As we said, it cannot be saved.
To me, it's failed. As an institution, sadly, and I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but sadly, it's failed, and I mean, go on. We can talk about many other things, but the Deutsche Bank lack of delivering of the gold is just another to the jigsaw.
Well, and of course, it's hard to be surprised with the level of manipulation, the level of debt. It's hard to be surprised when we see these calamities after all that's been done over all these years. If everything went by exact mathematics, Deutsche Bank would be gone now, except for the level of manipulation has propped it up for so long. And I just wanted to ask you, because of course when we spoke with you, I think it was in February, the derivative exposure for Germany was for Deutsche Bank was at $75 trillion, which was the GDP of the entire world. Now it's gone down, not significantly, but somewhat since then. But it looks like they're on their last legs. Could you go into a bit of what you see in the next year or two for Deutsche Bank, if it's even going to last 2 years, that is?
With Deutsche Bank, if you actually think about the derivatives and the derivative contracts, it's an insurance policy. We explained in the last video that a derivative is nothing more than a leveraged 50-50 bet of a future event. And if you'll always get one winner, one loser. The only true winner of a derivative is the fee for the person who actually puts the derivative together. But the actual counterparty will always be one winner and one loser. But of course, what will happen with Deutsche Bank is somebody will just maintain that derivative. Somebody will completely take over the toxic derivative. And of course, all they're doing is they're just postponing the inevitable. In other words, if you're sat on a losing derivative that and your counterparty knows that you will lose, at the end of the day, when that derivative expires, you will lose. Well, if you've got somebody like the German, central bank or the ECB, if they see that, what they will do is they'll take over maintaining that derivative. They'll actually pay the insurance premium, because at the end of the day, that's all a derivative is. It's a very small amount for the risk of something going up or down. And I think what's going to actually happen with Deutsche Bank, I think that the ECB will prop up and maintain the derivatives until the absolute death, until the end. Yeah. Now, Brexit, are we going to get Frexit? They're already talking about a string of referendums. And I think what's going to happen, I'm changing my stance with Deutsche Bank. I think with Deutsche Bank, it'll naturally go down to, at the moment, what is it, $13 or, I'm not looked for a few days. But I think what's going to happen with Deutsche Bank is that it's going to naturally just eventually, go down. But it won't actually collapse. I don't think we're going to get a Lehman style collapse. And the reason why I don't think we're going to get a Lehman style collapse, I think the ECB will do whatever it takes. They're buying up bonds as though they are going out of fashion. And at what point do you actually say enough's enough? So I do think with Deutsche Bank, probably in February I was getting a Lehman style excitement, but now after 6 months I believe that we're going to see basically they're just going to keep it on life support.
It's hard to tell if something's dead or alive with the level of manipulation after all this time. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Weekend at Bernie's, but it's basically just propping a dead horse up. It's just holding it up by strings.
That's right. And the last thing that the ECB wants right now is a failed institution like Deutsche Bank. So they'll do whatever they can, and it's going to cost. Ultimately, someone's going to have to pay, and it's going to cost taxpayers a lot of money. Someone's going to have to pay somewhere down the line, and this is the bit that I find. I think 2008 was the end of democracy, and 2008 was the moment they bailed out to the tunes that they were bailing out without going to vote. That was it. The market ended in 2008, and what we're seeing now is we're seeing the ripple effects. 8 years on, after 8 years, the central banks should have had, cleaner balance sheets, and they've got worse balance sheets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, what we've seen with Deutsche Bank really goes to show, and with the 2008 crash, really goes to show who is truly in charge. Now, there is so much more we could ask you about, but we'll have to wrap it up. So in closing, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the success of Brexit and how so many of these globalist financiers and bankers were totally wrong about it crashing the economy.
I think, first of all, when you say has it crashed the economy, don't forget that Mark Carney has pumped 500 billion. Mm-hmm. Now, if he hadn't have done that, then yeah. But you can't. People are saying, "Oh, the stock market's gone up," so
Yeah.
The stock market, I've said this before on Twitter and on Steemit, the stock market, the market, and the economy are three completely different things. And when people talk about a double dip or a triple dip or everything's going up, the economy's going up, well, they're looking at a graphical representation of manipulation. So the fact that central banks can pump whatever they want into the stock market and force prices up, does that mean the economy's doing well? Well, the moment a central bank has to pump $1, or in the UK, £1 into the market, it's failed. The economy has failed. where the economy is strong is when it's paying that back.
Yeah, it was somewhat humorous watching as the Brexit vote was coming in, all of these people thinking that it was the end of civilization because people didn't want some globalist, unelected bureaucrats running their lives from Brussels. And it was interesting to watch the feedback from people, which kind of I think a lot of people were very deceived by, of course, the mainstream media about it, to believe that that was going to crash the economy. All the while, we have these out of control central planners and central bankers, and we've seen where all of this distress, or a lot of this distress, comes from. Yet people want to blame sovereignty for the problems of the economy and of the markets. And it was an interesting thing to watch, because it just showed the level of deception and the level of ignorance a lot of people had about the markets.
Well, the problem is that you're adding debt onto something that is not providing a return or doesn't have any value. When you spend money, especially through government, Keynesian economics, that you want to borrow money in order to try to get any economic growth, it doesn't make sense at all. If you borrow that money to a guy that knows how to use that money to create new technology, like the blockchain and other technologies out there, or innovate or do something with that time, or raise the value of that money that they borrowed, well, of course, it's a valuable way of borrowing money. But when you borrow it to nothing, like a government spending, it doesn't make sense at all to me.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely. And you know, John, with debt, you've got your productive debt, where exactly what you've said there, you're investing for the future, roads, infrastructure, education, research, so that the beneficiaries are the people, the next generation. That's productive debt. Non-productive debt is where you take your credit card, you go down to Starbucks, you swipe it, and you go and get a coffee on credit. Well, who's going to get the benefit of that tomorrow?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you know, it's interesting watching, for example, I know you've gotten to witness Brexit, actually living over there, and of course you've gotten to see it firsthand. We get the news traveling over the ocean here, but it's interesting to go from, you know, globalist central planning to more sovereign central planning, which is still wrong. It's another flavor of centrally planned economies. But most of the people that were surveyed, most of the people asked about Brexit, probably, like the people that were against Brexit, a lot of them probably wouldn't even know what central planning means. They just see it as this kind of overall paintbrush, broad stroke of what it is, as, oh, well, it's some kind of racist, some kind of evil sovereign initiative or ideal that doesn't fit with our new moralistic, tolerant views, which it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't connect, but that's what a lot of people saw with it, that it was somehow some kind of racist idea, when really it was giving more freedom into the hands of the individuals.
And what we're seeing is like we're seeing the end of globalism in itself and the move towards globalism, I believe. And with the technologies like blockchain and other technologies that are coming out there, that makes it possible for the free market to reign free with a fantastic technology behind it. Now you're going to free the markets, and you're going to decentralize away from the corrupt central planning that have been, you know, going rampant over 100-something years. Plus, you know, they want to implement a global government, and that's, you know, the ultimate goal. But I don't think it's ever going to happen, because people are starting to wake up, and they're starting to want, you know, their freedoms back, and it's easy with the new technologies that are coming up.
Yeah, with more and more people every day kind of waking up to what's happening to the monetary system globally, and the global monetary unions that are being formed through things like the IMF. I think people, I don't know, I can't see that lasting too much longer. I mean, when everything comes crashing down, we'll know who to blame this time, and not continue to repeat the same issues, same problems that we have been kind of sucked into believing were the answer for so long, that Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned the IMF there. I think you've probably picked up that I believe that the derivative blockchain is going to create this new world currency. And, I strongly believe this is the case, and this will happen, more so now than ever. Absolutely. The US dollar is going to cease to become the dollar, the reserve, global reserve currency, and it's going to migrate. Now the IMF, the SDR, the special drawing rights, is going to be used as an intermediary, because I think is going to happen is that it's going to go US dollar, SDR, derivatives, digital currency. And bizarrely, guys, I don't know whether you've picked up on it, but there's a press conference, and I was watching it just before we came on air. It was Putin giving a press conference, and one of the things he said was that in the G20 in China, the top of the agenda was digital technology. Mm-hmm. And when you actually read it, it's on YouTube. It's a live. In fact, it's on RT. You don't have to listen to it for long. It's right at the very beginning, and he basically said top of the agenda was digital technology, and I believe that the G20 is a natural progression from the G7, and I think we're going to see a hop, skip and a jump from the US dollar, SDR, derivatives, global digital currency, and you only have to read in between the lines. Yeah, and this is where I find it fascinating. You don't get somebody like Putin who concentrates a press conference and talks about digital technology.
Isn't it incredible? We're watching history unfold in this last year. I mean, to be quite honest, it's hard to keep up with. It's just happening so fast, and we've seen it as something happening for many years now, but it's really, really starting to all come together now. And they don't just, as you mentioned, they don't just talk about these things for nothing. There's a reason why a lot of these people are forced to talk about it. I know we were talking to you in, I think, February about how what's his name, Jamie Dimon, was talking about this and was kind of hinting at it. I think back in December he was speaking about it, but now look at what's happening. I mean, it's just expanding exponentially and right in front of our eyes, and we're witnessing a real monetary revolution happening.
There's a lot of banks, and there's also credit unions in the US now that actually might be before. It's a consortium of 50 credit unions that are working on this technology together, with the R3 consortium and everything getting implemented on timer.
Absolutely.
Well,
now,
John, just very quickly going back to that, I tweeted from that credit union story that came out today, I tweeted something along the lines of, in the future, all mortgages, all loans, all credit, everything that is effectively a debt will be on the blockchain. Okay. So you'll have your house mortgage will be on the blockchain.
It's an incredible thing to ponder, that's for sure. And just wrapping up, Stephen, because we're low on time here.
Sure.
What's your warning to the people across the planet regarding the future of the global monetary system and what people need to do to stay secured and insured?
Well, first of all, I would say, don't believe what you are told on mainstream. That's number one. Absolutely number one. Secondly, it's an illusion. Don't think for 1 minute, just because the stock market's going up, that the economy is strong. The best investment that anybody should make is educating themselves. It's free, and it will give them a better understanding as to what's happening. And don't rely on me, don't rely on world alternative media. Use us as a tool, but get your own do your own due diligence and educate yourself. And it doesn't take long. If you said, right, I've got a certain amount of time, educate yourself. Understand what it's all about. There's a lot of information out there, and I think over the last 8 years, I think people have just got lazy, and they've turned on the telly, they've seen something, they got bored, they've been told, you know, the economy is going great and the jobs are being created, and that's it. It's for them. It's yeah, and that's what's happened. We've just got lazy, and now the best. We are now an interaction in history. I think this is 2016 has been probably one of the best years that I've had in the last 20 years. That goes to show how excited I am about it. And I think people just need to understand that, you know, if you want to make money, you're not going to make it overnight. But how you will make money is understand and learn. And you know, that's the best advice I can get is filter through mainstream and concentrate on doing your own research. And once you've done that, you'll then understand a hell of a lot more, and just do not believe what you're told.
Absolutely. Well said. And you know, you mentioned a really good point there, Stephen, when people are sitting in front of the television and they see something come on and they don't actually look into anything they're hearing. They literally just regurgitate it. They hear something, it goes in one ear and it comes out their mouth. They don't put any effort into researching. They just say what they hear. It's like a game of Simon Says. That, you know, someone says something, they say it again. And it takes away from what humans have been able to get above the other animals, which is innovation, learning, and taking that information and putting it into creating and doing something incredible. And instead of, I always say it's kind of like the video game effect. When I was a kid, I liked to play video games, but I after a while I would be sitting there playing and I just thought, well, I got to the end of the game, I won the game, but what did I accomplish? Absolutely nothing. So imagine if I put this amount of effort into something great, what I could accomplish. And if you can just look at life like a video game and try and win it, it's amazing what you can, accomplish.
Yeah. I honestly think over the next, and I don't think it's going to take long, I think over the next 18 months, we're going to see blogging millionaires.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's what we're going to see. And it's taking what you've just said, where you've said, you know, you've played the game, you've done it all for free, but all of a sudden people are saying, you know what, I want to be paid for this. And it won't take long to go from nothing to $1 million, because if you've got a story to tell that it triggers people's imagination, and it won't take long. It will not take long, and then suddenly you will get over. I think over the next 18 months, blogging millionaires.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Ask Jeff Berwick.
Yeah, absolutely. The future is wide open, and it's up to you, the viewer, to do something about it, because it's going to take you getting on your feet and doing whatever you can, whatever you believe in. Just work on it, be patient and be diligent, and just be consistent and persistent, and just work every ounce of breath into what you believe in and what you have a passion for. And it's unbelievable what you can accomplish, and it's all on you. You know, no one's going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. You have to be responsible. You have to be independent individual that takes hold of their own life and does whatever they can to either win or just to live comfortably. It's up to you. It's all on you. Just don't sit back and do nothing, because nothing will change. Everything will remain the same, and nothing good will come. I mean, I always hear people, well, I couldn't accomplish this. Well, how long did he try it for? Oh, well, I tried it for 3 months. Well, that's not long enough. You got to try a bit harder than that. And it all comes down to that, just putting all of your effort into it. So I really enjoy talking with you, Stephen. You have some incredible insight into so many of the issues that we're watching around the world. We often reference you in our videos. So, Stephen, can you just give the viewer an idea of where they can find you on Twitter and elsewhere?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what I've tried to do over the last 18 months is to concentrate on Twitter. So, people always say, have you got a website? Have you got any other form of communication? And I'll just say, go to Twitter. So I'm on Twitter at Stephen P. Kendal. That's Stephen with a PH, P. Kendal, Kendal. Stephen P. Kendal. And once you start understanding what I'm about, it's all basically about derivatives, blockchain, and the future of global markets. That's what I talk about. And I've had probably one of the best years, and I've been doing it now on Twitter for about 4 years now, and I've probably had the best year. And now it really is starting to pick up. So Twitter is where you'll find us.
And what's your handle on Steemit?
On Steemit, well, I made a mistake. I should have kept the P, but I dropped the P on Steemit. So on Steemit, it is at Stephen Kendal.
All right.
So
check the bottom of the screen. We'll put it in the description as well. And thank you very much for joining us once again. We'll have to be speaking with you in the future. You do incredible work. And, I'm always watching your page there on Twitter, looking for what's new. So thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you.
And this is Josh Sigurdson, John Sneisen, signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.